Lifestories Live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another life story coming to you from Lifestories Worldwide. A very special story this evening, coming live from Odessa in Ukraine. If you need help, you need some prayer, then contact us on our hotline. You'll see the number on the screen, +44 794 355 0287. You can also go to our website, lifestoriesworldwide.com, and there you'll find all sorts of interesting information to help and encourage you. We welcome especially those in Ukraine who are listening this evening. We pray God's blessing on you. But tonight, we have a very special guest, Vitaly Kogan, coming to you from Odessa, and his daughter, Abigail, is going to help in translating into English, as Vitaly is going to speak in Russian. For those who are joining on Zoom, you will need to choose the English channel, select the English channel to listen to the translation. It's also going out live on Facebook and YouTube in Russian and English. So I'm going to hand over now to Vitaly to share his story. Thank you, Vitaly.
I would like to share my story with you. It's just a story of a regular guy whom God took and just blessed me. And I truly have a blessed life. I'm 55 years old, and at this moment of my life, looking back, I can truly say that God's hand has kept me, has protected me, and has led me until this moment. I have a wife, I have 2 children of my own, and over 10 children that we accepted into our family who stay with us and live with us. Because we have an orphanage, and we are pretty much as parents to these additional 10 children. They're living with us. And aside from that, a lot of years of my life were spent in Siberia, in Russia. I was born and I grew up in the western part of Ukraine, not far away from the Polish border. My parents are of Jewish descent. So after the Second World War, they changed their last name to Ukrainian last name. They didn't know how to survive. They tried to hide their Jewish roots. My grandma, she was to Auschwitz, the concentration camp where the Germans were killing the Jews and other nationalities as well. In October 1945, they brought her to Auschwitz, to that concentration camp along with other people, and she was living there. And she was a beautiful young woman. She was very healthy. She was just working there. They didn't kill her right away. And then at the end of the year, and as the winter of the new coming year was coming in, one day the Germans just left everything and just fled. And all of the prisoners that were there in that concentration camp, they were just completely burned out. They were there without food. They were just in a horrible state. They stayed in that prison, in the concentration camp, until the spring came. They were so scared that if they were to step out, if people were to see them, to figure out that these are the prisoners from the Auschwitz camp, they will just be killed right there on the street for being the Jews. And then in the spring, in the March of 1945, they started realizing that the Second World War was coming to the end, that the Germans were leaving their positions. And so my grandma, along with other prisoners, they got on a train. It was not a passenger train. It was a train that was bringing food and other stuff. So they got on that train, and they suddenly, 2-3 days later, they decided to jump off the train. And as she was jumping, She got off, she jumped off the train, she turned her leg, and the train cut her, just went through her leg. And so some other people, additional people that were right there at the moment, they took care of her. And so with this huge pain of her heart, that's my grandma, she lived for 96 years. And she was the one to raise me up, and then my parents as well. With this pain in their heart, my parents, they were living this pain against the Soviet Union, this pain against all kind of evil. They were looking for the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? Right after the Second World War. And they found Jesus. And so when I was growing up, there was a Bible in my house. My father took me to services. Those were very interesting services. In the times of underground church, those people were helping each other. They were the true family. I remember that in that church where I was growing up, we only had a few cars for the entire community. And then because of the Soviet Union, the services would usually be either 10 or 11 p.m. or 5 or 6 a.m. And then those few cars, the drivers would go and pick up the elderly and then take them to the services. There was so much care in that church. And then I was a teenager. I was about 13 years old. And to me, it seemed that faith and church and Jesus, all of these are the values of my parents. Yeah, of course, I love my parents. They're hardworking people. They love me so much. They do everything for me. They're great and amazing. But my life, why am I supposed to follow the way of my parents? Later I found out in the Bible that there is a passage that says, God is my God. One of the people in the Bible, David, he wrote a whole book, Psalms. And in those Psalms, we can find those words where he says, you are my Savior, you are my protector, you are the one who upholds me, you are the one who protects me. Just yesterday, I was in Mykolaiv, a city that is under rockets and bombs right now.
Lifestories.
Over 2,000 people were attending the service. All of them are new believers who just came to the Lord. They're just taking their first steps towards Jesus because the circumstances of their life are so hard. They're truly living under rackets. 38 racket jets were shot at their city just 2 nights ago. And this past night, this morning, the hospital was destroyed in that city. And also people were dying and dying and dying. And you know, when the jets are flying over your head, when you hear that noise all the time, when people around you die, all of the things that seemed important yesterday, they just kind of fall away. You know, when I was growing up, a good house, a wonderful car, a great vacation, those seemed like something of value. But right now, it doesn't matter. People, they just come to church. Officially, the service is supposed to start at 6. We probably came at about 5:05 p.m. 1,500 people are sitting at church already. And the pastor, he brought me up and he said, hey, we got to start sooner because look, the hall is full. And people are listening to it. There are people on the street listening to it. We will start sooner than we were supposed to. That's how many people we have tonight. All of these people, about 3-4 months ago, they were not even thinking about Jesus. They were just living their own life. And you know, I started telling them about David. David, he was the person who didn't just believe in God. God became his personal God to him. You know, the same thing happened to my life. When I was a teenager, and you probably were a teenager at some time, at some point of life, and you probably meet a lot of teenagers every day, or see them or communicate with them. And you know, I was the kind of teenager who just kind of wanted to establish my own. You know, I was telling my father, hey, Dad, this is good, but I know by myself how I'm supposed to do in my life. And my father, he was a very wise person. He told me, son, sometimes you speak too boldly. You speak as if you know what you're saying, what you're talking about. You are talking as if this is my faith, but you're kind of on the side. And I tell him, yeah, for truly, I'm on the side. Maybe, you know, before I die, I'll start actually praying. But this whole thing you do every week and every day, you know, I've got a whole life in front of me. I don't want to live it that way. So my father very calmly sat in front of me. And he told me, you know, before you decide that you're not going to be a person living every day with the Lord, before you decide to put God on the shelf, first I would like to ask you something. I'll make a request. Please read the Bible from cover to cover. You'll make judgments about this book. You'll be talking that this book is just a book and whatever. But before you go that way, just read the Bible, at least the New Testament. And I go, okay, that's a challenge. Okay, Dad, I'll show you. I'll show and I'll prove it to you that this is just a book. And my father told me, okay, be a man of your word. Don't just run around. Don't just blah, blah into the air. Just actually sit and read it. And I told him, okay, I will. And then we'll have a conversation. And then I was maybe about at the 3rd book of the New Testament on the Gospel of John. I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this, but I can never forget that experience. I was sitting there reading just to prove to my father that this is just a book, that it doesn't matter for my life, that I can just keep going the way I want to. And I was just by myself in the room, reading there at my desk. And suddenly, in one of the moments, I had this feeling as if right there next to me, he is standing, as if he just gave me a hug, as if something that's very soft, that's so warm, that touch, that just touched my heart. I just experienced it. And you know, just like as a kid, I started crying right there. And I remember, I can recall me saying, Lord, I don't know what I will have, what I will need in my life path. I want to be a doctor, but I don't know if I'll ever make it. God, please bless my life. Please help me. Please bless my destiny. Please go along with me. You know, I was talking to him as if he was right there and right in front of me. And such incredible peace has just filled my heart. This atmosphere of complete acceptance, as if I just came from a long way afar, and I'm this young guy, and I'm so tired. And suddenly I just fall into the embrace of the Father, and it is so warm, and it feels so cozy and so homey. And I just found peace. And then, you know, all the thoughts of whether God exists or he doesn't, they just kind of, they were swept away. They didn't matter anymore. From that moment on, I just knew that I knew that I knew. Not that just God existed, but he is my God. He's not just the God of my granddad or grandma that God has kept through Auschwitz. He's not just the God of my dad, but no, he is my God. You know, sometime later, maybe about 2 years down the road, I was about 15 years old. I came late to the New Year's service. You know, New Year's, 1 year ends, another year starts. And here was the service, and I'm just, you know, we didn't really have a hall. Soviet Union times, underground church, someone's house, and I'm just there at the end by the door. And I'm listening to the end of the sermon, and this preacher, he does an altar call. And he says, hey, you have a whole year in front of you. And God really wants to see what's in your heart. And he just starts saying, telling the story about Anna, a woman who was childless in the Bible. You know, Old Testament, 2 wives, 1 man. One wife has children, another one does not.
Life Stories.
That does not have children, cannot have them. She came to the temple and she turned to God. And as she's praying to God, as she's giving her promise to him, she says, hey, Lord, if you give me health, if you give me the blessing, you know, maybe you have those moments in your life when you just turn to the Lord and you say, if I have a way out of the situation, if you bless my family and my children and my grandchildren, I will just bring my all to you. I will be all yours. I will serve you till the end of the days. And in a similar fashion, this woman in this story, she was standing before the face of God and she was saying, Lord, if you give me a child, if you give me this privilege of being pregnant and I have a boy, I will dedicate him to you. You know, it's such a paradox. You do not have a kid, you cannot have a child. And then if you can finally have a child, then you'll probably want to love him like completely like an idol. Who will you give this promised kid to? God is gracious. He's not asking you to give him up. But no, she out of her own heart, she does it. She says, I will give him this boy up for you. And this priest, he heard this prayer and he says, hey, woman, are you drunk? Like, you're saying some nonsense. She says, no, I'm just pouring out my heart before the Lord. And suddenly the Spirit of the Lord touches the priest. And the priest says to this woman, hey, keep going because God will fulfill your promise. I really like it when you come before the Lord and you come to Him with a request and you say, Lord, help me. And it seems like everything is just impossible. You cannot do it. This could not be done. But suddenly God says, no, I will do it. I will make a miracle in your life. You go home and the Lord will fulfill your request. And so she comes to her husband, she says, hey, like I was praying to the Lord and the priest came to me and he says that it will come to pass. And the husband was also good. He was a nice one. And he said, yeah, okay, may the Lord fulfill it. Yes. He knows that if the woman has a kid and she gives birth, and then after all of this, to give up the kid, your own child, your own blood, how can you do it? But okay, we'll see. May the Lord just fulfill your request. Suddenly, a few years down the road, here she has a boy. She got pregnant, she gave birth, and she actually did bring him to the temple with this prayer in her heart that here is the boy, here is my promised child. May he serve the Lord. And through the story of my life, I do understand what it means to give up the dearest thing you have. We had one child also that we adopted. His name was David. And when he was 28 years old, we were standing at his funeral. And I remember this cry in my heart, Lord, this could not be true. Now I have this gap in my heart that could just not heal just in a moment. I know that feeling of losing someone. But here, this woman would think that, okay, how can you do this out of your own will? You're probably going to cry and you're probably going to mourn over your child. But no, here, this woman returns from the temple and she's singing to the Lord. She has given up something very precious. She has given up her child for him to serve the Lord. And it is written in the Bible that he became one of the most famous priests in that time. Everybody knew Samuel. He is written in the history of priests and of men of God as a man through whom God was speaking to the humanity at that time. But this man came to pass because his mother opened up her heart and gave the dearest thing she had to the Lord. And so all of this was spoken when I was 15 at a service. And he said, hey, I want to pray at the end. He said at an altar call, because someone here, the Lord needs him for his generation. The Lord is looking for a man. And in my heart, I said, Lord, I do not want to just believe in you. I do not just want to come to you to be blessed by you. Of course, I do want to have a good life. But no, I do want to come to you for you, Jesus. I want something more. I want to give all of myself to you. And I dedicate myself to you completely. And tens and thousands of times in my life, I have repeated that prayer of dedication. When I go through hardest times of my life, I keep saying, Lord, I'm still yours. When my days are over, you will actually embrace me. When my labor is over here on the earth, I will be with you forever. Those 2 moments, when I was just a teenager, they were the key moments of my life. And I want to kind of rewind into the future. At the age of 23, I got married, and God gave me a wonderful wife. Where she grew up? She grew up in Mariupol. That city is famous today. That's the city that the Russian army completely destroyed in the past few months. And after that prayer, when I said, Lord, I want to dedicate all of myself to you. The Lord started working with my heart. He, first of all, has placed a desire in my heart. That's how God works. He gives you a desire. He gives you the thought and then a desire. And the desire that started growing in my heart was to go to the north, to the place where Eskimos people live, in this little houses, and The average lifespan is about 30 to 40 years. Just to go to them, just to share the gospel with them, just to share true life with them, that, your life could be blessed, it could be filled with power. This desire within me, it just started growing and growing and growing and growing. When I saw this woman, when I saw this young girl, and I was about to propose to her, and I was in this kind of conversation that, hey, would you please pray if you want to be my wife? I also told her that, hey, I don't think I'm going to stay and live in the Baltic states. Yes, we have a wonderful church and a wonderful pastor that I completely love, and the move of God is here. I wasn't part of the leadership team and ministry team. Everything I dreamt of, I had it.